Hi, I'm Nathan, 30, and 6 months ago I finally clawed my way out of a toxic childhood and into the tiniest slice of peace. A one-bedroom apartment with a wobbly IKEA table, second-hand couch, and no one telling me how I was ungrateful for not folding socks their way. Then my parents sued me for emotional damages because I wouldn't let them move in. The lawsuit was titled Collins vs. Collins, claimed for emotional distress due to denied housing support. Yes, my parents dragged me into court because I refused to let them live in my 457-square-foot apartment that barely fit me and my cat, Atticus. Let me back up. I grew up in a house where boundaries were considered personal attacks. My mom, a full-time martyr, could burst into tears if I so much as closed my bedroom door. My dad, a retired Navy officer turned professional guilt dispenser. "We gave you life," was their favorite argument ender. Like that justified everything from screaming matches to controlling who I dated. I moved out at 24. It took 2 jobs, 4 years of bouncing between roommates, and 1 emergency room visit from stress-induced ulcers before I saved enough for this tiny place. I signed the lease with shaking hands and cried on the floor the first night, because for once, no one could barge in and tell me I was a disappointment. I thought I was free. Then, 5 months later, they lost their house. Foreclosure. Turns out they'd taken out a second mortgage to finance some get-rich-quick MLM home goods scheme I had sold them on. They never told me any of this, not until they called me at work. "We need to move in with you," my mom said flatly, like she was announcing a trip to the store. I laughed. Thought it was a joke. "We're serious," my dad said. "It's your turn to step up. You're not a kid anymore." They wanted to bring 2 people, 3 dogs, and their king-sized bed into my 1-bedroom apartment. When I told them that wasn't possible, my mom sobbed like I'd hit her. My dad went quiet. Dead quiet. Then he said, "You owe us. You wouldn't be here if it weren't for us. You don't get to abandon your family now." I hung up. 3 days later, I was served with papers. They were suing me for $75,000 in emotional damages, claiming I inflicted long-term psychological stress by refusing to offer familial housing support during a time of proven hardship. They even attached a screenshot of a text I sent that said, "I'm not responsible for the consequences of your choices." My therapist told me to stay calm. My lawyer, thank God I had legal shield through work, told me to prepare for a character assassination. They weren't just trying to move in anymore. They were trying to punish me for living without them. The first court date was surreal. I walked into that beige courtroom in my cheapest button-down, hands sweating through my thrifted blazer, and there they were, my parents, dressed like they were auditioning for a Hallmark drama about betrayed saints. My dad wore his old military blazer. My mom had tissues in both hands before the hearing even started. They didn't look devastated. They looked prepared. Their lawyer, a smug man with a shiny forehead and the energy of a budget TV pastor, began with, "This is a simple case of a son turning his back on his aging parents in their time of greatest need." Then they read testimonies. My mother. "He always pushed us away. He never appreciated our sacrifices. When he was 14, I found a notebook where he wrote that he hated living here. That still haunts me." My dad. "He's always had antisocial tendencies. He refuses phone calls. He barely visits. We tried to love him, but he resents responsibility." I wanted to stand up and scream. But my lawyer squeezed my arm under the table and whispered, "Let them dig their own hole." Then they played voicemails. Not mine, theirs. A montage of guilt trips from the past year. "So I guess you just don't care that we might be homeless. Thanks for proving blood doesn't matter. Every dollar you've earned, we paved the road for. We raised you. You owe us. That's what family means." The judge raised an eyebrow. My lawyer smiled. Then came the weirdest moment of the day. Their lawyer dramatically passed around printed Facebook posts. Of mine. Posts like, "So grateful for my peace and my space. Couldn't survive without boundaries." And, "You don't owe anyone access to your home just because they share your DNA." They actually read these out loud like they were hate speech. "Your Honor," their lawyer concluded, "these statements show callous disregard for the emotional well-being of the very people who gave him life. We're not just asking for financial justice. We're asking for accountability. The courtroom was silent. I sat there, blinking, unsure if I'd just been nominated for Most Ungrateful Son in America or if we were about to get hit with a Lifetime movie plot twist. Then the judge looked at me and said, "Mr. Collins, do you have a response?" "Oh, I had one. I do, Your Honor," I said, standing up slowly, my legs buzzing with adrenaline. I didn't plan to speak. I didn't even know I could without being prompted. But something inside me snapped. "I'd like to submit my own exhibit," I said. From my bag, I pulled out a small black binder. My therapist told me to start keeping written records when things started going south last year. It held screenshots, emails, voicemails, a paper trail of decades of emotional manipulation dressed up as parenting. My lawyer helped me organize it into a timeline. I handed it to the clerk. And then I told my story. "I'm not refusing to house my parents because I'm selfish," I said. "I'm refusing because living with them nearly destroyed me." I watched my mom blink slowly, the tears drying up the moment she realized I wasn't going to roll over. My dad controlled every decision of my life until I left at 24. He tracked my phone, read my journals, installed software on my laptop to monitor what I was doing in college for safety. When I said I was applying to art school, he cut off all support. My mom told me I'd regret embarrassing them. I saw the judge glance at the binder as she flipped to a transcript of a voicemail where my dad said, "You'll come crawling back when your little freedom fantasy blows up in your face." "They say they gave me life," I said, my voice trembling. "But they've spent that life demanding payment for it. I finally saved enough to rent a one-bedroom apartment. It's the only space in my life that feels like mine. And when they demanded to move in, without asking if I even had space, and I said no, they sued me." At this point, the courtroom was dead silent. "And Your Honor," I added, my voice firmer now, "I want to submit one more piece of testimony." I turned to the back row. My friend Jordan stepped forward, holding the hand of my 7-year-old niece, Lila, my cousin's daughter who I often babysit. She took the stand. And in the softest, most clear voice, Lila said, "Uncle Nathan is the only grown-up I feel safe with. I like his apartment because no one yells there." My mother covered her mouth. My dad's face turned to stone. The judge leaned back in her chair. "Plaintiff's claim for emotional damages is noted," she said. "But so is the defendant's. This may not be criminal court, but the emotional record here is extensive." The turning point wasn't explosive. It was quiet. Just the sound of a gavel. And the sound of the control my parents had held over me, finally cracking. After court, they didn't say a word to me. Not in the hallway. Not in the parking lot. My dad brushed past me like I was a stranger at a bus stop. My mom looked like she was trying to cry but couldn't quite find the emotion to squeeze out. Their case was dismissed. With prejudice. That meant they couldn't refile it. My lawyer told me it was basically the judicial version of, "Don't bring this nonsense here again." But winning didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving. That night, I sat alone on my sagging couch, Atticus curled up beside me, and stared at the walls of my tiny apartment, walls I'd scrubbed, painted, decorated. My sanctuary? My first real home. And for the first time, I didn't feel safe in it. Because now I knew what my parents were willing to do to force their way back in. Over the next week, it got quiet. Too quiet. No texts. No phone calls. No passive-aggressive emails or comments on my old social media posts. And then one afternoon, I found a handwritten letter taped to my door in my dad's unmistakable all-caps handwriting. "You will regret this. Blood is blood. When we're gone, you'll wish you had been a better son." Inside was a copy of a family expectations agreement I'd refused to sign when I was 19, something my dad tried to force on me when I moved into my first off-campus apartment. It had lines like, "I agree to make my family a financial priority when able. I agree to defer personal desires if my parents require assistance. I agree to consult my father before making major life decisions." I kept that paper all these years, folded in a notebook, as a reminder of why I fought so hard to escape. Now it was back. And this time, with a threat taped to my door. I called my lawyer. He helped me file a no-contact order. Not a full restraining order, but a legal document requesting zero direct communication unless through attorneys. Then I installed a second lock. I stopped leaving windows open. Got a security cam that pinged my phone every time someone even walked by my front door. My peace now came with a price, vigilance. And still, part of me felt guilty. Which is exactly what they always counted on. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my Aunt Melanie, my dad's sister, the one who stopped coming to holidays 10 years ago after the cheesecake incident, which no one ever explained. I heard what they did, she said. No hello. No small talk. Just straight into it. I've been waiting years for someone in this family to say enough. I sat there stunned, holding the phone like it might explode. No one ever talked openly about my parents. It was like this unspoken rule: we all suffered quietly so no one had to feel disloyal. I tried to go no contact with your dad in 2014, she said. He told my husband I was mentally unstable and got our church to pray for my clarity. He hijacked my Facebook, changed my passwords, and told my friends I was having a breakdown. My jaw dropped. He did what? He did what he always does. Uses shame like currency. Uses family like leverage. Melanie told me things I never knew, like how my mom had once tried to convince another relative that Melanie had stolen from her, just so she wouldn't be invited to Thanksgiving. You did the right thing, Nathan, she said quietly. You stopped the cycle. And I want you to know you're not crazy. You're not cruel. You're just free. That word stuck in my chest like a pebble behind my ribs. Free. I didn't feel it yet. But I wanted to. That weekend, I met with Melanie at a diner halfway between our cities. We talked for 4 hours, about everything. Her escape. My lawsuit. The way both of us still double-checked locks at night even though we were miles away from the people we feared. Before we left, she pressed an envelope into my hand. Family fund, she said. Use it for a better lock, or a better couch, or therapy. You're not alone anymore. It was $500 in cash. I cried in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive home. I didn't expect the media to care. But someone in my building, probably Jeff from 3B, who lives for Reddit drama, leaked the court docs online. Within 48 hours, my case had its own thread on r/insane parents. Then r/legal advice. Then some TikTok lawyer stitched it with the caption: parents suing for emotional damages because their adult kid won't let them move into his one-bedroom apartment. That's a new level of entitlement. The internet exploded. People made reaction videos. Memes. Someone animated the courtroom scene like it was a sketch comedy bit, with my mom sobbing into a tissue the size of a parachute, while the judge Googled how to evict your own parents. At first, it was funny. Then it wasn't. My inbox filled up, mostly with strangers saying thank you. People from all over the world, telling me about their own battles with manipulative parents. People who'd been called selfish, cold, ungrateful. Who were shamed for growing up, for setting boundaries, for leaving. But a few messages made my stomach twist. You only have one set of parents. You'll regret this when they die. Rotting alone in an apartment must be cozy. No wonder they sued you. You sound like a narcissist with a victim complex. I read those ones late at night. Let them crawl under my skin. I shouldn't have, but I did. That's when the nightmares started again. Waking up in cold sweats, heart racing, dreaming I was 17 again, standing in the hallway while my dad yanked open drawers in my bedroom, looking for proof I was hiding something. Old trauma doesn't knock. It just slips through cracks you didn't know were open. I finally called my therapist. Told her about the dreams. The panic. The lawsuit. The silence that followed it. She said something I'll never forget. When you remove a manipulator's control, they don't disappear. They just regroup. Silence can be a weapon too. I realized then that I wasn't just grieving the relationship I wanted with my parents. I was grieving the idea that they might ever earn it. That night I locked both bolts, turned off my phone, and slept on the couch with Atticus purring by my ribs. Just so I could breathe. 3 months after the lawsuit was dismissed, I got a letter. Not a threat. Not a guilt bomb. A legal notice. Apparently, my parents were now attempting to sue again, this time trying a new angle. Constructive abandonment of dependent elders. Some obscure clause in our state's civil code about adult children. Withholding reasonable aid during parental distress. My lawyer read it and just sighed. This is nonsense, she said. But nonsense still takes time, and court fees. That's when I snapped. Not in rage. Not in panic. I just stood up, walked to the tiny hall closet, and opened the box I swore I'd never touch again. Inside, childhood photos, birthday cards, report cards my mom used to make me frame. I started shredding. Not dramatically. Not in some movie montage. Just slowly. One at a time. The picture of me at 9, holding a perfect attendance certificate that came with a lecture for not getting straight A's. A Christmas card with, "We're proud of the man you could become." A graduation photo they refused to frame because I didn't give a speech like my cousin Rachel. I kept 2 things. A drawing I made when I was 5, me in a little house with a cat, smiling, and a sticky note from my old therapist that said, "You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." That week, I filed for a restraining order. Full. And I told my lawyer I was done playing defense. Let's go on record about the abuse, I said. The control. The history. All of it. I'm not hiding anymore. It was terrifying. But also, freeing. And then something happened I didn't expect. A week later, I got an email from my cousin Jeremy. We hadn't spoken since we were teenagers, back when he got grounded for not taking his shoes off in my parents' house and they banned him for disrespect. The subject line: "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." He told me that watching what happened cracked something open in the whole family. That my parents weren't just hard, they were cruel. Controlling. That everyone knew, but no one ever said it out loud. "I thought you were the problem," he wrote. "But now I think you were just the first one brave enough to stop playing the game." Then he asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. I said yes. The courtroom was quieter the second time. No press. No cousin Lila on the stand. Just me, my lawyer, and the same 2 people who once dictated every rule in my life, now seated across from me in uncomfortable chairs, looking older than I remembered. Their new lawyer didn't give a big speech this time. Just laid out the claim that I, their only child, had emotionally abandoned them in their time of need. That I had a moral obligation to house them during a housing crisis. That I weaponized independence to humiliate them. My dad sat rigid, jaw clenched. My mom, mascara already smudged, kept dabbing her eyes with a floral handkerchief like she'd studied courtroom dramas for this moment. The judge, same one as before, stared at them, unblinking. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins," she said, "we've already dismissed one baseless claim. Why am I seeing this again?" Their lawyer started rambling about revised legal grounds and social expectations. I don't remember most of it. I just remember the judge sighing, flipping through the file with the slow, weary fingers of someone who'd seen 1,000 different versions of this dysfunction. Then she asked if I wanted to speak. And I did. But not to the judge. To them. I stood. My voice didn't shake this time. "You know what hurts?" I said. "It's not that you sued me. It's that you genuinely think I was built to serve you." They both blinked. "I didn't go no contact. I didn't scream at you in public. I didn't write an article about you or call the news. I just said no. I said no, and you treated it like war." My mother's lip quivered. My father scowled but didn't interrupt. "You raised me to believe that love meant sacrifice. That respect meant obedience. But you never taught me that boundaries could coexist with family. You only taught me that your needs came first. Always." I paused, looked at the judge, then back at them. "And when I finally chose my own peace, my own tiny apartment and a cat and a job and quiet, you treated it like betrayal. Like freedom was an insult." The judge cleared her throat gently, but she didn't stop me. "I want the court to understand," I said. "This isn't about housing. They didn't ask if I had room. They assumed they could take it. They didn't ask how I was doing. They accused me of abandoning them. They made my independence into a crime. And then they tried to punish me for it. My lawyer looked stunned. I think she expected me to just nod and let the paperwork speak. But after years of being told my voice was too loud, too emotional, too much, I wasn't giving it up again. I'm not ashamed of having limits. I'm proud I said no. Because that no saved my life. The room was dead quiet when I sat down. The judge nodded slowly. Thank you, Mr. Collins. The ruling came within minutes. Case dismissed. Again. With prejudice. Again. But this time, the judge added something. She looked directly at my parents. Consider this your final warning. This court is not a tool for emotional manipulation. If you continue to harass your son through legal systems, we will impose financial penalties. And if you attempt any further contact outside of legal counsel, the court is prepared to consider a full protective order. My dad's mouth opened like he might argue, but he didn't. He just nodded once. And then it was over. The months that followed weren't magical. No happy family reunions. No apologies. Just a slow, cautious rebuilding of something that felt like a life. I started seeing a new therapist. Got promoted at work. Adopted a second cat, Cleo, to keep Atticus company when I stayed late at the office. I swapped out my wobbly kitchen table for one I built myself, with stained wood and black metal legs. A table that didn't creak when I set down a coffee mug. And the door? Still has 2 locks. Still gets double-checked every night. But now, when I bolt them, I don't feel paranoid. I feel safe. A year later, I saw my parents one more time. At my Aunt Melanie's memorial service. She passed suddenly, aneurysm, and left behind a will that shocked the entire family. She left me her house. Not to live in. She knew I didn't want roots like that yet. But she left it to me because she said I was the only one who broke the chain. Give this house to someone who needs a fresh start, her will said. Someone like you a year ago. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. After the service, my parents hovered by the snack table. They didn't come over. They didn't say a word. And I realized in that moment, I didn't need them to. 6 months later, I donated the house to a nonprofit that provides transitional housing for LGBTQ+ teens kicked out by their families. A few weeks after, I got a letter from a 19-year-old who'd moved in. She wrote, I don't know who you are, but this is the first bed I've ever had that I wasn't afraid to sleep in. Thank you. That letter is framed above my desk now. Right next to the sticky note that says, You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. I didn't win a case. I won my life. And I'll never let anyone take it from me again.